everyone, to a portrait study in watercolors. Today I'm drawing Sasha. When I sketch the head, I start out with a circle. I define the jawline, where the ear is going to go, and then I use little circles for the nose and the eyes, and I sketch out the mouth. Here I'm defining the details of the ear. I left this part in real time just so you can see just how fast I work. Most of this video is going to be sped up so that we can see the whole process in less than the time it took to make it. Here I'm changing the shape of the eyes because they were too wide open. The expression is a little softer than that, and I wanted to capture that. And here we are. We have a finished sketch. Now it's just time to erase some guidelines that we don't need anymore. Here I'm rolling out the eraser. I roll it out into a little snake, and then what I do is I roll it gently over the top of the sketch, and this makes the sketch more transparent, almost like a layer in Photoshop, so that when I paint over it, you won't see the sketch very much. I'm just using these really cheap watercolor cakes that one might find in a high school classroom, or even an elementary school classroom. I'm really only using 2 brushes for this project. This is the number 8 round brush from Michaels or AC Moore or something. The first layer of paint that I put down for the skin is usually a warm tone, but it depends on the environment that I want my subject to be sitting in. Sasha has a very warm undertone to their skin, and so I'm using a pinkish orange as a base layer. Here's the other brush that I'm using. It's a number 4 round from the same kit. Again, the materials I'm using aren't very expensive, they're very accessible, and part of the reason I wanted to do this video was because I wanted to show that you don't have to have fantastic materials to make fantastic art. Watercolors is all about building up layers, and usually very thin layers. This next layer is going to be more of a yellowy tone. It's much like an ochre. And the 2 layers of the ochre and the pinkish orange red combined create a pretty equal skin tone for Sasha's face. Then I'm using this darker, almost a brown ochre for shadows. Notice that I blend out pigments with the brush and some water after I've put them down. Here go on the freckles. Freckles are pretty simple to do. I just take several different shades and hues of brown and dilute it with water. And then just stipple it on. Here I'm going to use a gray mixed with a blue to create the shadows on the eyeballs. Without these shadows, the eyes don't look like they're set into the face, and it can look a little odd if it doesn't have any shadows. This is a first layer base coat of the green that I'm using for Sacha's eyes. And now for the hair, one of my favorite parts. The base coat for the hair is that same yellow ochre from before. The way I work with hair is I put down a big base coat first of the lightest color that'll be appearing in the hair, and I dab out some highlights with just a paper towel. Notice I'm using a rather large brush, the number 8. I'm careful around the edges, but the objective is just to cover the area. I'm using that same darker ochre from before for the basic shadows. For these shadows, I'm just blocking in the shapes of where the darker areas are. It's also really important to know where you want your highlights to be before you start putting shadows down. With watercolor, you can't really make the paint lighter. You can really only make it darker once you've put it down. And so the process of pushing the shadows into the background and allowing the highlights to come through to the front continues on for quite a while. Sacha has a lot of hair. For their shirt, I'm just mixing a red and blue together to get a nice purple. And using that large number 8 brush again, I'm just filling it in. Because the texture of their shirt is velvet, it has some funky highlights and shadows that I emulate with some fun watercolor textures. Now I can block out some of the shapes of these strands of hair that overlap with the clothing, and further define some of the shapes that are within the hair. Now I start using that same shade of purple in the hair to further deepen the shadows. It's important to bring this color into different parts of the painting because it unifies it. Also, because the opposite color of yellow is purple, it creates a really nice contrast within the hair, as well as a sense of depth. Now to define the eyes. I'm doing this by deepening the shadows under the lid and adding my second layer of color for the iris. And lastly, the final details of the eyes, nose, lips, and ears, and we're just about done. For these details, I'm using a size 01 brown micron pen. I prefer using brown to black with portraits because black can be a little bit too stark, especially if the portrait is supposed to be soft. And last but not least, I'm adding reflections to the eyes using white gouache paint and a very thin paintbrush. And we're done. All that's left to do is sign it. Thanks for joining me, and I hope I'll see you again soon.